YouTube, and welcome again to Pocky for Thought. Today we'll be talking about Yamcha, and I'm also going to be talking a little bit about something that another YouTuber has said about Yamcha, and how a lot of what he said kind of meshes with an overall problem that we as a fandom have when talking about a character's importance. It's been a while since I've watched Black and Fist's 2 videos of Yamcha's top 10 awesome moments and Yamcha's top 10 failures videos. But something that stood out to me was that in the both lists include filler moments and movies, but while the top 10 awesome moments, Black and Fist discussed rather lengthy about how even though his awesome moments were filler, he was still going to count them and why. He really didn't spend as much time discussing why he was counting filler. It was kind of like, yeah, it's filler, but it still has more weight than the awesome moments that happened in filler. As though instances of character traits or failings or failure at something what carried a lot more weight and could be considered more canon than any good things that happened in the filler parts of episodes or movies. And maybe he just hadn't thought about that, or hadn't thought that it might be seen that he was talking about it that way. I really do like Black and Fist videos. He and Quamansland are very interesting YouTubers, and I definitely recommend checking out their channels if you haven't seen any of their videos. They stick very much to facts about what happens in universe and make pretty big distinctions between what is manga canon and anime canon. And honestly, they've seen more of the show than I have. Like, they go talk on lengthily about Boo Saga and movies that I haven't seen and are more up to date. I'm currently talking at it from a perspective of rewatching the remastered HD editions of the little orange boxes and still listening to the older line readings, and I've never seen any of Kai. It's actually because of Black and Fist and Quaman that I even know about Dragon Ball Minus and some of the newer stuff like Dragon Ball Xenoverse and other stuff like that. So I'm not trying to bag on anybody. They're very knowledgeable YouTubers, and they do pretty cool work with their videos and discussion topics. It's just that I think that there needs to be a little extra bits tacked on, because what Black and Fist mostly talked about in Yamcha's top 10 awesome moments were moments of physical prowess and battle achievements. And his top 10 failure videos talked a lot about both physical and fighting failures, in addition to character faults and bad personality traits, which I don't think is fair, because the difference between the two is ultimately indicative of an overall overvaluing of physical strength and ability in the fandom and in the Dragon Ball universe itself. So I'm not saying that it came out of nowhere, and there's cultural reasons for that, both in Western cultures that have had Dragon Ball translated and imported, and in the Japanese cultural context that Dragon Ball comes from. Though I do know that there are some cultural differences in what can be perceived as strength, and I think that's important too, but I would need to do further research into what those differences all are. I just know that they exist. But there is something that we do have in common, and that is when it comes to men, there is a great value placed on physical strength and manliness and roar. And that definitely has a big role in how we view characters like Yamcha and Krillin and Tenshin, Han, and Chaozu, and a bunch of other characters, and even Gohan when he becomes older. But we don't really talk about the weaker physically, the characters who are physically weaker than like Goku or Vegeta or Gohan or Piccolo. We don't really talk about their good traits nearly as much. I mean, Krillin, out of all the humans, especially when compared to Piccolo, Goku, Vegeta, and Gohan, Krillin gets the most support out of the weaker characters. He gets the most support from the fandom because, and often it's at Yamcha's expense or someone else's expense, but he does get a lot of support, and it's probably because we see Krillin a lot. He is Goku's best friend, and Krillin is pretty much always involved in all the different sagas and conflicts between villains, which, if we're talking about Frieza and everything that happened on Namek, that's not really a fair comparison because Yamcha, Tenshin, Han, and Chaozu are dead. And they choose to wish back only Piccolo because they're doing some strategizing stuff, and Piccolo ultimately is the strongest out of the four. But that doesn't mean that they should be punished for not being there since they were dead. And after Cell Saga, Yamcha does kind of fall off the martial arts wagon, but I'll get to that in a little bit. Part of possibly the devaluing of Yamcha in the fandom is that there are actually quite a lot of people who did not grow up watching Dragon Ball first, especially here in the United States, because let's be honest, we grew up with Dragon Ball Z first. Most of us did, especially when it was first brought over to the United States, because it was dubbed first by Funimation. Funimation got it after Ocean. The Ocean dub, I think. So it actually got dubbed by the Ocean people first, and then Funimation got the rights, and Funimation has had it kind of ever since. So we didn't really grow up watching Yamcha be a really good person, a really good, valuable member of the team, basically. Because we meet in Dragon Ball, Goku meets Yamcha before he meets Krillin, and that, while Krillin is definitely Goku's best friend throughout a lot of the series, there are things about Yamcha that are actually like really cool that people really don't talk about, or they let what happens in Z overshadow the shining moments that he had in Dragon Ball. And Black and Fist does mention some of those shining moments in Dragon Ball, like when he basically saved the day when Goku transformed into a giant ape for the first time in the story, and he saved Bulma, overcame his fear of women to save her, and had Poir transform into a sword so he could cut off Goku's tail. That was all Yamcha. All Yamcha. And we really don't talk about that nearly as often, especially since it was the very first story arc in Dragon Ball. And even in Team 4 Star's top 10 Dragon Ball moments, Oolong is referred to as like the guy who saved the day. And yeah, he made the wish with the dragon, which meant that Pilaf couldn't make his wish for world domination, but Yamcha doesn't get any props really for what he did do to save the day. And that's definitely Yamcha's most shining moment that involves like physical strength and tactical planning and all that good stuff that like we value in like a fighter or a hero. But there's some other things that Yamcha does get to demonstrate, even if he doesn't actually get to fight, is 3 very important personality traits that places Yamcha far above a lot of the other characters in terms of how good of a man Yamcha is. And I really think we should talk about that more. There definitely is value in like physical strength and the ability to actually physically protect other people, but I really do not think that should come at the cost of devaluing the traits that Yamcha does have that are good. And there are traits that other characters in the series do have, but those other characters often have something else to them that makes them more popular than Yamcha is. I'm not saying we have to make Yamcha like the most popular ever. That's not really possible, but I think that he's devalued and criticized a lot more than he deserves. So, without further ado, the 3 traits that put Yamcha ahead above the rest are loyalty, forgiveness, and kindness. And what really got me that was about Yamcha's, was a great example of Yamcha's loyalty is that when Goku is taking on the Red Ribbon Army all by himself, like this is like the end of the Red Ribbon Army arc, and Goku's like kicking all this butt in the Red Ribbon Army base, and Bulma and Krillin are already aware that Goku's been fighting the Red Ribbon Army, but Yamcha, he's been entirely unaware of the Red Ribbon Army's involvement in Goku's search for the Dragon Balls. But the very moment is brought to Yamcha's attention that Goku needs help in the fight with the Red Ribbon Army, he, unlike Krillin and Bulma, he gets in that plane and he doesn't even ask any questions. He's just like, alright, I'll be right there to pick you up and then we'll go save Goku. He is there. He is there for his friend. And it gave me lots of feels. Like, Goku ultimately takes care of the Red Ribbon Army all by himself. But just the fact that Yamcha so quickly jumped into that plane to go pick up Bulma and Krillin and Master Roshi and Launch and the others. I actually think that was all that was there, because I think Oolong and Por were already with Yamcha. But he was just so ready to help his friend, even though it was the most evil army in the Dragon Ball universe that like no one had ever won against before. And there was already a whole tournament where Yamcha just didn't make the cut beyond the final 8 tournament participants because Master Roshi's a dick. He was just so ready to help him. Oh! So that's a really good example of Yamcha's loyalty. And there's also evidence of it when he does overcome his fear of women to like actually carry Bulma to safety in the first story arc. And even how long he and Bulma were together, Bulma was not an easy person to have as a girlfriend. There was a couple episodes where Bulma had like been very insecure and was getting mad at Yamcha for the fact that girls liked Yamcha. Like, he wasn't flirting with them or anything, he was just existing in the city as a cute guy, and all these girls were like making a fan club or something. There was just a lot of women flirting with Yamcha, and that made Bulma jealous and really insecure of herself, and she took her anger out on Yamcha. And he puts up with it. I mean, he ends up saying some things about her character to Goku and Oolong and Puar when he thinks Bulma isn't there, because Bulma is shrunk down into a little teeny tiny person. But he was going to follow it up with, but I love her or something, but Bulma interrupts him before he can really finish. But it was very obviously a setup for he loves her and he wants to keep trying to be a couple with her. And that was so sweet, and I loved it. And I do like Bulma. Bulma is a great character, and she's a she is a great friend to Goku, and I'm not gonna say great person because she does have all these flaws and stuff. So she's not perfect, but she is a good person who does have some character failings, but that doesn't get in the way of her ultimately doing the right thing. So Bulma's great. I'm not bashing Bulma at all. It's just that at that point in her character development, she was very insecure and couldn't let things go, but she very much liked herself and cared about how she herself felt, and was just having some issues with ending or suspending her selfishness a bit, or rationally telling herself that everything's fine, Yamcha's a good boyfriend and is loyal and all that stuff. She just wasn't willing to let go of her own insecurities, because everyone's a little insecure sometimes. That's unavoidable. It's just that at that point, Bulma really wasn't at a spot where she and Yamcha were really working, I guess. And I guess they ultimately never do quite work, because Bulma ends up getting with Vegeta and they never stayed together ultimately, because they go on and off for quite a bit throughout the series, especially when Z picks up. But even when he's not together with Bulma, he's still a good friend to her, and he's good friends with Krillin, and he was a good student to Master Roshi, and he's just such a good person. And talking about friends was making me think of Ten Shinhan, and that brings me up to good trait number 2, which is forgiveness. Cause, okay, Ten Shinhan and Yamcha fight in the second Tenkaichi Budokai that Goku's in. And Ten Shinhan wins the fight. Like, Yamcha's out cold before he does this, but Ten Shinhan breaks Yamcha's leg in half. You see it like lift up where Ten Shinhan's knee broke it, and then the leg turns this way, and then it falls back down on the ground. Yamcha's leg has been smacked in half. It was brutal, and the English subtitle for the episode is Yamcha's Big Break, and I can't believe they did that. Oh dear God. So, like, that hurt a lot, and he was in the hospital for quite some time, Yamcha was, and even as it goes into the King Piccolo arc, his leg is still like bandaged up and stuff, and this is, Yamcha's injury is the longest period that we've seen someone have an injury. Maybe aside from when Goku had that full body cast in Dragon Ball Z and was in the hospital and kind of just waiting for Yajirobe to show up with a sensu bean. But there was no sensu bean for Yamcha. Yamcha had to wait for that leg to heal up all on its own. And this is more of a headcanon than anything else, but I personally think that leg never stops bothering Yamcha. He just kind of like works through the pain and continues training even with was essentially a bad leg. But I personally think that as he gets older, that's a big part in why that's probably a big part of why he stopped training and stopped doing martial arts, especially when he couldn't keep up. And there was also he clearly has an anxiety disorder, which probably wasn't just about women. It's just that women were probably a very big aggravator for a social anxiety, because expectations from not just women who want to date him, but also people and men and women and special stuff, and so scary. That's very understandable if you have like an anxiety disorder, which Yamcha kind of obviously has. But I'll talk about that later. Yamcha's leg essentially is never the same. Even if it does get to where it had been, it was broken in half. And yet he still forgives Ten Shinhan, and he becomes his friend. And throughout Z, you can tell that they're actually pretty close friends. They've got each other's back, and people ship them. Like, there was a little bit of rival tension in the tournament, but like they're there are people who like really ship them, and Tenshinhan broke Yamcha's leg in half and everything's fine, and he's like encouraging Tenshinhan to do his best in King Kai's training, and even gives him like a joke to help Tenshinhan get past King Kai's "you gotta make me laugh" rule, and he's just so forgiving, and he doesn't really hold a grudge against Bulma for going out with Vegeta, who, between Vegeta and Nappa and the Cybermen, Vegeta's like responsible for killing Yamcha the first time. And he's like, he just kind of rolls with it, and he's just so full of forgiveness, and I'm gonna cry. Not really, but, and like Goku forgives a lot too, but Goku is very different from Yamcha, and that's gonna be, and if I don't have time to talk about that right now, but Yamcha, sweet forgiving Yamcha. And the first two kind of feed into the third one, which is kindness. And as you know from my previous videos about how it's canon that Son Goku is developmentally disabled in Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z, there's the part where Goku doesn't recognize who Yamcha is because Yamcha got a haircut, and Goku doesn't understand a lot of different things, and Yamcha is, out of Bulma and Krillin and Master Roshi and Yamcha is the most patient and non-judgmental, and there's like only one time that I can think of that Yamcha was like, "Oh, you gotta be kidding me," and that's when Goku's like he's like nude in the middle of the street because he like took off his clothes because they were going to go clothes shopping, and it's like, oh my god, how embarrassing. But that's like the only time that I've seen so far. I'm still watching the King Piccolo arc on Hulu, but from what I remember from Z and what I've rewatched in Dragon Ball, that's significant that that's the one time that I've seen so far in hundreds of episodes that Yamcha's ever been like frustrated with Goku or having his patience tried. And again, he forgives Tenshinhan and Chiaotzu, and he's just so kind, even when he's being like a desert bandit who's like stealing crap from people. Like, that's like the least scary, dangerous thing that has ever happened to Goku and Bulma throughout the entire series, is encountering Yamcha. And he's not really a villain for that long, really just a couple episodes, because the longer he like tails them, the more concerned for their safety that he gets, and the more involved he gets and looking after them, and they just become friends that way, and Yamcha's the best. But I have heard, I haven't read the interviews myself, but I have heard that Akira Toriyama doesn't really like Yamcha, and so that is like a narrative reason why Yamcha really falls away to the wayside and doesn't really keep up the strength. And there's some filler that is maybe disappointing, like how Yamcha tried to take some shortcuts with his training in between Namek and Android sagas. But if like everyone around you is like, whee, at the speed of light to ultimate power or whatever, and you're struggling to keep up with the bad leg, and nothing's really going your way because your anxiety disorder is getting in the way of everything, you can't really blame him. So I do want Yamcha to do his best and work as hard as he can to do what makes him happy and to be happy and have a good life. I'm not gonna hold it against him for trying to take a few shortcuts, especially when the shortcuts don't work. Like, that's just how life is. I'm not gonna tack that up to personal failing on number 2 on or whatever number it was on Black and Fist list. I forget what number entirely. But I do know that Black and Fist listed Yamcha losing Bulma to Vegeta as Yamcha's #1 failing, and that shit ain't right. Bulma is her own person. She makes her own decisions, and if she and Yamcha didn't work out, then fine. That is between Bulma and Yamcha, and Vegeta doesn't really have a say in the matter at all. Vegeta only gets with Bulma because Bulma wants to get with Vegeta. And Vegeta's like, I guess he's like, fine. But Bulma gets with Bulma once, okay? Bulma ain't putting up with anybody's shit. In fact, the only shit that Bulma puts up with is shit that she wants to put up with, and her own shit. And Yamcha, Vegeta and Bulma, they have enough in common that they don't let each other run all over them. Yamcha, he would like try to like make her happy when she was mad, even when it's not his fault, or even when there's no real way to fix why Bulma's upset, because Bulma would be upset because she's insecure, or mostly it's Bulma being insecure. Most of the problems between Yamcha and Bulma was Bulma being insecure, not Yamcha actually cheating on her or anything. That's not what happened. So what if Yamcha looks at some attractive women who are like working out or something sometimes? Yamcha's not a pervert, but he like can appreciate like the female form, and maybe that's drawn in a kind of untasteful way because it's a Dragon Ball's ultimately a gag manga, but Yamcha lacks the perversion that Master Roshi and even Krillin have at times. Krillin matures as the story goes on and stuff, but Krillin started out being a little manipulative, cut corners, little jerk. And Yamcha, even when he does cut corners, he's not being an asshole about it. He's not trying to trick people into failing just so he can get to the top. He's just trying to keep up and not doing it properly, and my poor Yamcha. I don't know what else to say. But it's not... Bulma getting with Vegeta has nothing to do with Yamcha. It's just what happened. It's not Yamcha's fault. It's nobody's fault. It's just how people's emotions just do stuff. And Bulma and Yamcha, I don't even think they were together at that point, because I think they were on like an off period, because basically Yamcha comes back to life, and that's kind of, after being dead, that's kind of something you have to get used to. And then Bulma has to get used to Yamcha actually being around again, especially since she's already been through a mourning period. Yeah, they were going to get the Dragon Balls, but she like was really into Yamcha, and he was dead. And can you really imagine someone other than Chi-Chi willing to put themselves through something like that again if they could help it? Like, and maybe it was just that Bulma didn't like Yamcha as much as she thought she did, but enough to like, maybe they were just ultimately good friends who ended up dating for a while. Who knows really? Akira Toriyama doesn't really give us all these details and stuff, but you can't make it out like a woman being in charge of herself and wanting to look after herself and make her own decisions is somehow the fault of a man. That's not how it works. We are our own people. We make our own decisions, and sometimes they're bad decisions, but that doesn't matter because they're our decisions, and sometimes we get into situations where we need some help, and just because it was our decision in the first place and it didn't go out so well doesn't mean that we don't deserve some help, but that doesn't mean that anything that we decide to do for ourselves is the fault of some man. And making it out like it's somehow a fault in Yamcha's character that Bulma got attached to Vegeta is stupid, because Vegeta has all the personal failings in the world, and yeah, he gets better because he has Bulma and Trunks and periods of peace and all that stuff, but it doesn't change the fact that Vegeta is an asshole. So if Bulma falls for Vegeta, it's just because she likes Vegeta for some reason, and they have actually a lot of things in common. Vegeta has problems with insecurity. Bulma has problems with insecurity. Both of them are stubborn. Both of them are selfish. Both of them are very full of themselves, and they're perfect for those reasons. And Yamcha is not full of himself. He is also insecure, but that's mostly targeted inward instead of outward onto other people. So Bulma's insecurity would then force her onto Yamcha and make him, and then he would try to make her happy, and that just wasn't working. So Vegeta going, at you, and Bulma going, you, like in the Dragon Ball Z Abridged, and it just works for them in ways that Bulma and Yamcha just weren't working. And it's not, I'm not gonna say that like Yamcha and Bulma was an unhealthy relationship. I don't really think that, but they just weren't working. And sometimes you just don't work, but you still care about each other and love each other and want to be friends still. And that doesn't mean that it's anybody's fault. It doesn't mean that anyone had anything wrong with them or anything like that. It's just how things work. I already talked about the leg and the anxiety disorder, so I'm done. Be sure, if you have your annotations on, you'll find links to other videos that I've made here. And you can always look at my channel to see other topics. I promise I do less yelling. I especially recommend checking out Developmentally Disabled Goku Parts 1 and 2. There's also some cosplay videos with my sister and some me trying out like Japanese foods that you can just buy at the grocery store. There's a couple short films that I made. I'm actually trying to put together another short film, but that's probably going to take a while. And I'll see you in the next video, which, it might be about Master Roshi, it might be about something else, it might even be about a different anime, so I guess we'll find out when it happens. So, this has been Pocky for Thought, and I'll talk to you guys later. Bye!